Greetings, Doom fans, and welcome to another edition of the Frostbite Falls Daily Rant, here on the Doomstead Diner. This week in Doom, I do have a specific topic of interest getting a lot of play, not just in the Collapse blogs, but in the MSM as well. This is the rampant fear that the powers that be running the too-big-to-fail banks and their marionettes running the government are going to eliminate cash, also known as paper notes, in favor of an all-digibit monetary system. There's a certain amount of irony to this, since the people most upset and outraged are the same people who hate paper fiat notes to begin with. Just in this case, they hate the digibit money even more, except for Bitcoin, which some folks think is a new and more secure form of money itself. Now, first of all, paper money is already only a small fraction of the total pool of notional money currently being pushed around by supercomputers sporting HFT algorithms, a maximum of 10% of the money supply, and that is not counting all the notional money wrapped up in derivatives contracts, which nobody knows the actual amount of, just that it is probably more than $1 quadrillion. Besides that, in the Western industrialized nations, cash is already a small part of the daily transactions being done. Most people use their plastic debit and credit cards for their daily purchases. The banks and the government love this because every transaction can be tracked and everything can be taxed with no sneaky off-the-books trading going on they are not aware of. This, of course, is the main driver for completely eliminating cash. And the excuse, of course, is that cash is the favored exchange medium of all the folks doing nefarious evil things, like dealing drugs or prostitution. I mean, even if prostitution happens to be legal in your neighborhood, who wants to have your visit to the local brothel recorded on your monthly statement, right? The other reason are all those nasty savers out there who are not keeping their money in the bank on the corner. They're stuffing it in wads into the Bank of Sealy. The banksters hate that because then they can't use your deposit in their bank to rehypothecate up still more money and then go gambling with it in the local stock market. Casino. Or even the one over in Shanghai either. You also may not be aware that the minute you deposit your paycheck into the bank, it is no longer your money. You have made an unsecured loan to the bank. So if they happen to go tits up on some of their bets, they don't have to pay you back. Although in FDIC insured accounts, the government is supposed to pay you off with money they don't have either. The government, as you know, I am sure, is already in debt to the tune of something approaching $20 trillion now, as they just raised the debt ceiling, again to avoid another one of those embarrassing government shutdown farces. Getting rid of cash forces you to use banks all the time for everything. It also makes things like capital controls easier to enforce. You can't skip out of the country with a suitcase full of cash. They can limit the amount of cash you can get each day out of an ATM also, at least so long as there still is some cash being printed up. This has already been done, both in Cyprus and in Greece, and probably pretty soon in Portugal and Spain too, since they are both seriously on the ropes. Portugal has some socialists and communists making noises the fascists in Brussels don't like hearing, and Spain has the Catalonians threatening to secede and printing their own money too. Now, the deal there is that there are many places now where there is a shortage of real money, like euros or sterling floating around the local economy. So some locales are creating their own local trading systems to keep some commerce going on in the neighborhood. Bristol in jolly old England is one place they have been doing this for a few years. First problem here, of course, is that to get these systems off the ground, you have to buy your credits with them in, you guessed it, sterling, dollars, or euros. Second problem. These systems themselves are generally electronic and depend on computers. The only difference is you have somebody local who is running it instead of a too-big-to-fail bank. But that doesn't make them necessarily any more honest or the system any more secure. So now you run into some of the real problems with all this digital magical solution to our monetary woes. Every system is, of course, open to gaming or fraud by anyone who runs the system and has the admin keys to the bank, although encrypted systems and stuff like Bitcoin can make that more difficult. There's still likely to be a security hole somewhere in the transaction process, though. For instance, say I use my Bitcoins to buy a new folding solar panel on eBay. I'm still going to have to drop my name and address onto the transaction for them to ship the solar panel to me. So the government gets a record of the transaction this way. Do you think every vendor out there is going to do end-to-end encryption with public and private keys that the government does not have access to? That will never happen. Then, you have the small problem that all these digital systems require electricity to work and for all the communications networks to be functioning also. What happens when you have a big ice storm and the power lines all get pulled down and they can't get them all restrung for a week or two? Nobody can do any transactions. You can't even go buy some milk or beer either. There is a conceit embedded here that not only will all the current electrical and communications networks be available in industrialized countries and continue to function in perpetuity, we'll actually be able to expand this network to reach every corner of the globe. So no matter where you are, you can whip out your cell phone to pay for a hot dog from the vendor on the beach or whatever. If you look at Earth from space at night photos I used in the dimming bulb articles, you can easily see that the electrical networks we have in place really only cover a small portion of the Earth landmass. There are many areas that never got lit up at all. In the neighborhoods that did get lit up, the infrastructure is decaying and the fossil fuels to generate all the electricity are running a bit thin also. Country after country is running out of customers without enough credit to continue buying the electricity that is produced, which means utility after utility will be going out of biz. They are unlikely to keep paying their internet bills either, so those networks will go tits up also. So, while this idea of all electronic currency is a wet dream for banksters and their political puppets, it has a very limited lifespan at best and can only work in countries already well wired for both electricity and communications. All stores and all vendors in all these countries also have to have their own point-of-sale terminals up and running all the time, 24/7, and that includes everybody at a flea market or doing a yard sale to sell their old lawnmowers and furniture too. So, you'll need your phones to all do point-of-sale transactions too. And of course, everyone then needs a cell phone and has to be able to afford the monthly bill for that one too. While any normal thinking person can see how impractical this idea is, banksters and Poles are not normal thinking people. So, of course, they will try stuff like this. They have already tried some of it in Greece to stop the massive outflow of capital from their banking system as people lose faith in the banks. Not to mention, probably 50% of the population, at least, doesn't even have any money in the bank to begin with. At least not more than a month or two of bills anyhow. The final piece of the puzzle here on the cashless society are the negative interest rates that are now being pitched, not just at the top level of the banking system, but working their way down to the retail level as well. There is already virtually no interest paid on either savings accounts or checking accounts, and hidden fees and one-time charges amount to making it cost you money to keep your money in the bank. The idea of demurrage money is also being floated, where the money itself depreciates in value the longer you hold on to it. I read a figure as large as 8% a year was being pitched around for this. The idea with this one is it discourages the paradox of thrift by encouraging people to spend rather than save their money. Supposedly, this would then stimulate the economy. What is wrong with this picture? The problem is not that people are saving all their money hidden in the Bank of Sealy. The problem is that most people don't have any money to save at all, whether it is gold, silver, paper, or digibits. Creating NERP money, demurrage money, and going all digibit won't be creating any new jobs. If anything, it will destroy what is left of the real economy, which is like nada. The only thing which concerns Poles and banksters, though, is to try and find some means to keep their banking system on life support for another day. If all the money is electronic, at a moment's notice, they can do a bail-in of all the depositors' money to save the bank, and leave the old pensioners with a now empty bank account left hung out to dry. It's not going to work, and all it leads to is an increased loss of legitimacy for both the banking system and the governments. Both will crash in short order after that. On a monetary level, it is cutting off your nose to spite your face. So it goes, though, as everybody knows. And that's all the doom. This time until next time, here on the Doomstead Diner.